Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, I'm going to show you guys how to step by step turn a pen on your lathe. So when it comes to making pens, there's some bare minimum things that you're going to need. And one of them, of course, is a standard pen mandrel with a Morse taper on the end that coincides with the Morse taper of the headstock of your lathe. You're going to need a blank to turn for your pen. In this case, I'm using Bacote today, and it's a 3/4 by 3/4 inch blank. And I'm not sure of the length of it. It's 6 inches. So 3/4 by 3/4 by 6 inch blank. You're going to need a pen hardware kit. In this case, I'm turning a European style pen, and it's a twist pen. You can get them fairly inexpensively. I got this one at Lee Valley. So there you go. You need a pen kit. You're also going to need the bushings that go with that particular style pen. And the purpose of the bushings is to make it so that you turn your wood to the correct dimensions so that it mates with the pen hardware correctly. As well, you're going to need a pen mill. Now, you don't need one of these. This is for making the ends of the pen flush with the brass tube. And you don't really need one of these. It's just like a little extra thing to make it easier. But you could always use a sander and it would do the same thing. But if you have one of these, it makes it a little easier. And I'm going to be using one of these for the purposes of the video today. Of course, the other thing you're going to need is some CA glue. And in this particular instance for me, I'm going to be using the Hot Stuff Special T, which is a thicker viscosity gap filling glue, and it does have a little longer working time. That's all, to be able to slide your tubes into your wood correctly. The other thing that you're going to require will be a 7mm drill bit, and a lot of people prefer the brad point bits, but this is the bit that I use, and I really like it. I think it does a great job, and that's also going to be required for drilling the hole to accept your brass tubes. So now that we have it laid out as far as what we need to start making the pen, let's get into it. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do here is I'm going to want to get my brass tubes out of this pen kit, and the reason for that is I need to know the measurements of these so that I can cut my blank to insert the pen, the pen tubes. And once I got those brass tubes out, seal your bag back up, that way you're not losing any of the other pieces. But what we're going to do now is we're going to measure these tubes. You can see that they're two different lengths. I'll just show you that there. They're two different lengths in this particular pen's case. Every pen kit is different. You know, look through your instructions and you can see what they recommend. But what we're going to do is we're going to measure these tubes, and we are going to cut our blank to, or our blank. We're going to cut our blank to the proper lengths in order to accept these tubes. Now the measurement for that isn't exactly rocket science. As long as you have enough room to insert your tubes into your pieces, that's all you really require. So all I'm going to do, and this is just kind of the lazy man's way of doing it, I'm going to lay my tubes down on the blank, and I'm just going to draw a dividing line here between them. And now I know that that line is where I'm going to have to cut it. So I'm just going to go over to the bandsaw and cut it at that line. One thing I do want to point out to you though, when you're cutting these things, this has very specific grain in this piece of wood. In fact, the grain is quite gorgeous, and you want to keep the continuity of that grain in your pen. So really pay attention now to what side is what, and keep it in this configuration so that your pen will end up with the grain continuing in it and not look like you made it from two separate pieces of wood. Well, I've got my pieces cut, and I just cut it on that line. And what I've done, and it's just a helpful little thing, is I've drawn a piece of, or a line of chalk between the two pieces, just to show me the configuration that this piece of wood goes. Once I get it onto my mandrill, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It's once you turn it afterwards, it's obvious which way it goes. But until we get it drilled and the center tube installed and that sort of thing, at least we have a way now to identify which piece goes with which. And even if I throw them around and we don't know which one is what, there's no mistaking that those two chalk lines go together and we've got the piece back where it belongs without trying to line up the grain. Anyway, now what we want to do is we want to determine the center of each of these pieces, because we need to drill a 0.7 hole down through the middle of these two pieces to accept our brass tubes. So what I've done on both sections of the blanks is I've scored from corner to corner to mark the center, and then center punched there to help guide our bit. And when it comes to drilling these blanks, I mean, you can get all kinds of fancy jigs from your local woodworking store, but all I've done is I've drilled a 1/2 inch hole in the end of one of my hand screw clamps, and really that does just a great job of holding it securely in there while drilling, and it's being held flush and square. So what we're going to do now is we're going to drill from end to end on this blank, in through one side and right out through the other. Now you just want to be careful here. You don't want to push the drill bit too hard. Just let it do its job. With the drill bit that's this length, if you start pushing it and making it so that you're causing it to work too hard, you're going to cause it to go off center and wander. So you just want to go down through just a little bit and then back it off and let the drill bit clear out, and then back down through again just a little bit and clear out that drill bit. It's not a race. And you are drilling in hardwood, so there's no need to overheat the drill bit and to cause it to work unnecessarily hard. And there we go. With that, we've got the one drilled right through, and now we are going to go ahead and drill our other blank. We've got our 7mm holes drilled through both of our blanks, and what I'm going to do right now, just so I know that pieces are lined up, I'm just going to refresh these chalk lines, because they can wear off, you know, while you're working with it. For this particular pen, the shorter of our brass inserts is actually the tip of the pen, so this will be the writing end. So I've arranged the blanks in that way, just so that we don't lose track. Like I said, when you're dealing with a piece of wood that has extra grain in it, or grain that would make a difference how it lines up, you should really keep track of it. So the first thing I want to do now is I'm going to take some 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to give this these brass tubes just a little bit of a roughing up. There's some controversy as to whether or not this is necessary with the CA glue, but my thought here is that it doesn't hurt. Giving it a little bit of a rough texture to give it the glue something to really bite into, there's nothing wrong with that. So if you want to do this step, do it. If you don't, don't. So there we go. Those are both sanded. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to be using, as I said earlier, the thicker viscosity Super T glue. And what we're going to do is I'm going to coat these tubes on the outside, and then I'm going to push them into our hole. Now, this may be kind of over the top for detail, but what I like to do is where these two ends of the pen mate. Let me get this mill out of here so you can see it better. Where the two ends mate, I like to push it in from that end. That way, once I push it in flush with the glue on it, after I mill this flat, I'm not losing very much stock off of that end, and there will be more of the original figure to go together. If you push it in from this end and it stops there, you can see here that we're going to lose almost about 1/4 of an inch of the blank, and the grains may not line up as nicely. So with that being said, now I'm going to lay down a piece of wax paper here. I'm going to coat these up with some CA glue and slide them into our blanks. Now, one of the things that I like to do is to place your tube gently onto a scratch-all of some kind while you're coating it with the glue, and that way, of course, you have a little more control. You're not getting so coated in it. So you just want to give a nice generous coating of this glue on here, and you can see I'm starting to drip. And then we're just going to put it in here and rotate it as I put it in, just like that. And then I'm just going to push it down flush with this the wax paper, just to make sure that it goes in there. And you can see there now that that brass tube is glued in there. Now that's going to take a while to set up, so I'm going to go ahead now and glue in this other tube, and just in the same manner. Hopefully you can see the need here for the wax paper. It is quite a messy process, but the wax paper will go a long way to keeping the CA glue off of your bench. So there you go. Now I've got that one glued in, and on the mating pieces you can see that the brass tube in there, it's going to be minimal of grain or of wood loss at the end once we mill it, and that actually is going to be our next step. So I'm going to actually spray this with a little bit of accelerator to get this gluing up a bit faster, and then I'll come back. Well, here we have our mill set into our drill press, and the purpose for this mill, of course, is to clean out the CA from inside of this tube. As well, it's to cause this surface to be flush with that brass tube, as well as giving a square end so that all of our pen pieces can mate. Now, don't think for one instant that you can hold this with your hand. I spoke earlier about this hand screw clamp, and again, that's what you should be using, something to hold it firmly. So right now it's being cleaned out with the end bit, and we just want to drill it just a touch. You can see there the CA glue coming off. That's that white residue. And at that point in time there now, we can stop that because we can see the nice shiny brass is now shining through. So we now have this flush. The other side will actually look quite different. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side now and show you how that's going to look once it gets milled. I'll just give you another closer look at this one here. You can see where the mill has drilled it down, and we have some shiny brass there at the end. And like I said, now we're going to go ahead and do the other side of this section of the blank. Try not to manhandle it too much here, because you really don't want your chalk marks to disappear. We're still trying to keep those intact. So here we go now with the other side, as I said, and again, this one's going to look a bit different because we have a little further travel to go with the mill in order to get down to the brass tube. So just keep checking it. Okay, we'll just dump the shavings off of that, and you can see how much different this one is than the other one. We've got the brass tube here showing now, nice and shiny. We've taken very little material off of this side, and yet we've taken quite a bit off of this side. And like I said, that was the reason for pushing the tubes into the mating pieces, so that we lose less of the grain when the pieces come together. So that's how they are milled, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mill the other side of the blank, and then we're going to move on to the next step. The next step in this pen making process is we want to place all of our pieces onto our pen mandrel here, and every bushing set is different depending on the type of pen that you're turning, so make sure that you check the instructions as to how to set up your particular shims and where your blank goes. You'll note that my chalk lines are both facing in so that they are the mating pieces. So what we're going to do is, as the instructions say, we're going to take the large diameter bushing here, and then our short pen blank will slide on, and then our stepped bushing for this particular set, and then of course our longer blank, just like that, and then our next bushing will go on there, and then our knurled threaded nut on the end will now tighten this all together onto this mandrel assembly. And from here now we're going to take this over to the lathe. So here we are at the lathe, and we've got our setup. These chalk lines now don't really mean squat. They're going to be cut off in no time flat here. That was just the process so that we know that we have them mated correctly. So the next thing you want to do is you want to put your Morse taper into your headstock, and then bring your tailstock up to the other end. And of course, with a live center here, we're just going to put that just like that into the tailstock. Now we don't want too much pressure here, because pressure, if you put too much on your mandrel, it's going to warp and bow your mandrel, and you really don't want that. So the first step here now is that we're going to have to rough out these blanks. So starting with a roughing gouge, we're going to turn these to round. We've got it rough to round, and probably not completely, because we can still see some of our chalk marks, but I just wanted to, before I go any further, explain this a little bit. The purpose of the bushings is to get the proper size and dimensions so that your parts and pieces mate. I like to go just a little bit proud of that. Not much, maybe a 64th of an inch, and then we can always sand down to that bushing afterwards. I also like to use just the roughing gouge to pretty much get it right down to where I need it, and then from there I'll take a skew chisel and just finish it off. So with that being said, on this particular type of pen, we finish this end to be flush with the bushing, this end to be flush with the bushing, as is this end, but we need tenons cut in these two ends. So that's neither here nor there with showing you guys how to turn a pen. Each kit is different. I'm just stressing the fact that you really need to check the pen kit that you have to see what you require. So with that being said, now I'm going to carry on with the roughing gouge to get this down a little closer to the final dimension that I need. I've got it turned down. I like the shape. As I said, this particular pen requires a tenon to be cut here, and I've cut that. But your next step now is to sand it. So what you want to really do is take your speed down. There's no need to power through this. And normally I would have dust collection going. I like to bring over my shop vac hose and just place it right here and have it catch this dust that's falling down. But if I were to do that right now, you wouldn't hear a word that I had to say. So I don't know, maybe that's a good thing. But what we're going to do is sand this blank here, and we're just starting at 150 grit, and this 150 is going to bring us down to almost the exact place where we need to be for our final fit for our pen. So we're going to sand down almost flush to these bushings. And then what we're going to do is continue sanding 150, 220, 400 sort of thing all the way through. And I'm actually going to take this one as high as 600 grit on the pen itself. So I don't think that you guys really need to see me sand this. But just keep in mind, you want to keep that paper moving. You don't want to cause rings on this thing with the sandpaper. And as well, low speeds are better. Powering through sanding on a lathe is not the best thing. Sure, you'll get great removal of material, but you'll unnecessarily heat up your sandpaper and you'll cause one heck of a mess, and you'll cause grooving in your piece. Slow and steady wins the race here when it comes to this. You're not doing production turning. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and continue to sand this thing, and as I said, I'm going to sand it right up to 600, and then I'm going to come back and we'll see after that. The blank is cut, it's sanded. I'm down to 600 grit here, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's already a sheen on this just from the 600 grit. Now we're going to start into the process of the finish. And at this point in time, if you didn't watch last week's show with how to apply a CA finish, do yourself a favor, stop watching this video right now and go and watch that other video, because it'll show you everything you need to know about doing a CA finish. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to apply this CA finish. I've already waxed the bushings, as I said in last week's video. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply the CA finish to this particular pen. And I'm not sure exactly how much of this you guys really need to see. I mean, you saw the video last week, hopefully. And again, that should show you all you need to know for this process. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3, possibly 4 coats of CA on this project. And when I finish with that, I'm going to come back and we're going to buff it out, and then I'm going to show you the assembly of it. Well, now comes the rewarding part of the whole process, and that's the assembly of the pen, where you actually get to see the whole thing come together. And you can buy all kinds of pen presses. Some guys use their drill press. For me, I use a quick grip clamp with a couple pieces of hardwood double-sided and taped to the end pads here. It's just little blocks of maple. Anyway, the first thing you want to do with the assembly, of course, is separate your pieces and get them off of this mandrel. Now, sort of pay attention to what piece is what. I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point, but you never know, you know, if you had made a mistake, or if you weren't quite sure, you may have a problem assembling the pen together. Got the one piece separated here. There's a little bit of an issue here in that I guess I didn't put enough wax on the bushings, and the CA glue has caused the pen blank to stick to the bushing. It's not really that big of a deal. If you take it down to the end and you just give it a little gentle pry, there you go. I don't know if you heard that little click. That little click there is the pen blank releasing. So you can get it off fairly easily. So there's our pen pieces. We have a little bit of overhang here on the glue, and I'm just going to get a little X-Acto knife and just trim that off. So we have the excess glue trimmed off of here with the knife. If you've got a steady hand, I mean, you could do that on the lathe just with the very tip of the toe of your skew chisel. If you've got a steady hand, but I don't know, you guys, some of you guys have probably noticed that I don't. So anyway, so the first thing you want to do is you want to take your tip, and this is your tip. You want to line it up here at the end of your pen, making sure that it's square, and place it in the center of your quick grip clamp and just ease it up until they touch, and very gently now. See, that one's going a little crooked. You want to be careful. You want to be careful to get it in there square. Just squeeze the quick grip until that part compresses in. And I'll just hold that up there so you can see that now. There is the tip of our pen now in the pen itself. As simple as that. That's the tip of the pen assembled. The next piece to go in here is the twist mechanism for this pen, which is this part right here. And this brass part will go in first. So in the same part that you just worked on, which is this piece, you want to insert this into the end, and using your quick grip with your wooden pieces on it, you want to compress it into your blank that you've turned. Now this particular piece should extend 13/16 of an inch out of there, and what I've done is I've scored a line right there. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I can see it, and if you do it at your end, you'll be able to see it as well. So what we need to do is the same thing. Line up our pieces here, keeping an eye that things are going together squarely, because you don't want it to break. And then press it together until you get that line at 13/16 flush with the with the edge of the brass tube. Now I want to remind you, once you get this in here, you're not getting it out. So don't think that you can dry fit this and play around with it and all that kind of jazz, because you can't. So there it is right there. And then at this point now, we want to screw in our pen refill and just make sure that it is going to work correctly. So we can see there now that I've got the refill in, and there it is untwisted, and then when I twist it out, it's fully extended there for our pen. So we've got this in there correctly. So that is the front end of our pen done. The next step is to press in the end cap for this particular pen, and all you want to do here is line it up with the end like this, and then press it into place in the same way that you did the tip. And again, just using our little setup here of our quick grit clamp, we can squeeze that in there nice and tight, and there's your end. However, this particular one now unscrews just like so, and we can actually end up putting on a shirt clip on the pen if we so desire, just like so. So there you go. If that's the sort of thing you like, then put that on too. I kind of dig it, so I think I'll leave it. The last step here is to get this pretty little ring on, and this ring fits over top of that tenon that we cut earlier, and that's going to stay in place with a drop of CA glue. So I'm going to go ahead and slap a drop of CA glue on there, and then I'm going to press fit this together using the clamp as well. Like, you may want to have this set up with the distance before you put your CA glue on here, just so you're not being pressed for time. And just like that, there's our cap, or our ring. So we've got our tip, we've got our twist mechanism, we have our refill in, we have our end cap, we have our pocket clip, and our ring. And the last thing to do is just press these two pieces together, and that's only done by hand. We don't need a press for that. But this is where you want to pay attention to the grain, because this is what makes the difference between a good looking pen and a great looking pen, when you can get these grains lined up. So line up your grains as best you can, and then press these two pieces together. Just like that. And there you have it. Look at that. That's awesome. This truly is a gorgeous pen. I know that the recipient of this one is going to love it, because, hey, it's me. That's my pen. Anyway, guys, give it a try. What have you been waiting for? Don't be sitting on the fence thinking that this is hard to do. It really isn't. If you just take your time and pay attention to what you're doing, the bushing size the ends for you. The hardest part of this is being patient enough to sand it through the grits, and of course the CA finish. But if you follow that video that I posted last week and do a little bit of practice, I mean, you're going to be a master in no time. Truly a durable finish, truly a gorgeous pen. Guys, I want to thank you for watching. Please get yourself a mandrel, get yourself either the end mill or a sander, get yourself a kit. Try this. What are you waiting for? We're going to see you again next week with yet another woodworking video.